Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Your host is one tired guy. Let me tell you, man. Been working my butt off every single day, putting out fires, discovering things, designing things. Oh my gosh, every aspect of my brain is going crazy. So I thought I would take the opportunity to pass on something because in working lately on many different things, I'm doing engineering again, web engineering, lots of 3D. I'm doing clinical 3D. I'm doing creative 3D, working on a new script, plus just strategizing the show, doing the show. And I just thought it might be really valuable to, how do I put this? To help you find your perfection. Because as I'm dealing with each area of my own assignments, it is the same approach in every aspect, regardless if it's left brain or right brain. And I get asked this a lot, but never really asked in the sense of an educational aspect, as in, how do you do it? I want to get advice and let's do this. It's, I don't know. It's kind of like how you did that, and it's really kind of loose. Oh, I don't know how you do that, and how'd you get all that done in this amount of time, or whatever. And so, obviously, when you do something a lot, you sense when others do it, and you sense when others don't do it. And then in between, you'll sense people that tried to do it and for whatever reason reached a level of difficulty that they thought, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. And the truth of the matter is if you have a functioning body, even a partially functioning body, then there's pretty much no limits that can stop you from getting whatever the hell you want to do in life. And I know that sounds cliche, but we're going to go through it. But there are some precursors. Because I have to pre-qualify sort of, I guess, how my brain has worked since I was very little. And I don't know where certain parts of this come from. Because confidence is a huge part of it. And, you can say, okay, well, you got confidence because you have done this before. You got confidence because, I don't know, you got someone telling you can. When I was really, really young, I definitely did not have anyone telling me I couldn't, directly at all. I don't think. People, my parents just kind of left me alone. They were in their own world, which was fine with me. Even though I had aunts and uncles and that kind of stuff, I think it was my Uncle Clint. He was the dude that just sat me down, like I've said in several old episodes. He just treated me like an adult. He's like, oh, you're into physics. Okay, you're 9 years old. It's time you learn quantum physics. Let's go. So that was cool. And those were big moments. And he would just sit me down and say, here's how you draw a face photographically. Here's how you do whatever. Program, count binary, whatever it was. So I definitely had great mentors. But there's a point where all of what I had learned, was tucked away in the background. Sometimes it was helpful for learning the new thing, for sure. And other times I had to start something brand new that I had no background in. And the reason why I'm telling you this is that I have to imbue on you. I'm going to give you what I don't think I ever got directly, which is unequivocally, if you focus, you can get something to happen that you've never done before. But we got to slow down time here. We got to slow down the seconds. If I'm approaching something, from the age of 9 years old and up, I would look at a problem and say, it was two things. I would say to myself that I could figure this out. And two, I had this sort of euphoric feeling around me, almost like a weird bubble of probably all the endorphins that someone would get if someone had already done something before in the past that was of equal difficulty. And it was like I felt like I was going to succeed. Now, the only thing I can say that I know from friends of mine is being told by someone you can't, and you buying that. I understand that. You're young. If someone were to abuse you in that simple way, it could be even an older brother, younger brother. Occasionally, it's a parental unit that's jealous. It can definitely interfere. But hopefully you're past any of that now, and we can flush those people out because they were liars. They were unqualified opinion people. They didn't know you. As much as they may have birthed you, they don't know you. As much as they might have shared your genome, they don't know you. And even if in the past you struggled starting something and not finishing it, who cares? You're a new person every day you wake up. Like Dolores in Westworld. You're a new person. So I think the very first thing you need to kind of massage is realize, with almost a smirk on your face, if you have dealt with any negativity in your past. Let's say this is a very tough concept for you to accept about yourself. I want you to smile, and I want you to say, he's right. All that stuff I took in from my past, even my own personal past, if no one else was watching and I tried something and I quit too soon and then I look back with regret that I probably could have continued. All right. So you learn something. You learn one of the most valuable lessons in the world. Now, don't do that again. So next time you focus and put your mind to something, when you get that instinct to quit, you just think back at that moment and that regret feeling if you've done it before. Don't beat yourself up. Pick yourself up. Give yourself that, this time we're not going to stop. So that's sort of your Genesis mindset I want you to get in your head. What's some of the next feelings you might be having? Well, I don't know you, so maybe this applies to you, maybe it doesn't. Sometimes things are vast in their components, right? And you're thinking, well, I'm only one person. Can I really do all this work? And the answer is yes, most likely. Now, there might be something that's a little bit different, like you're going to create a little handheld video game, and so you either going to be the artist or you're going to be the coder. And so you're like, well, okay, definitely if you're the programmer, you can hire an artist. You just put little crappy art in there, and some other person will volunteer the art. There's art students everywhere looking for projects to put their artwork. And so you can find those people, but go ahead and get the game done with crappy art. And you might even find out your little primitive art is far more entertaining than the average amazing art. Because if you put out an app now and it looks amazing on the web store, well, then it looks like all the other amazing games. But if you had a quirky little style of drawing art that's kind of weird, something be like, ooh, that's one of the ugliest things I've ever seen. But why does it have 5 stars? Why? Because it's fun. And you can also borrow other people's artwork just while you're developing what you're doing. So coming into this realm with you as an only child, no brothers and sisters, no relatives that ever really helped, I can guarantee you can do a tremendous amount of stuff by yourself. For sure. You are exponentially more powerful the more you can add super talented people like yourself, as well as super dedicated people. But I'm going to say that from experience, if you're going to do this and you haven't done this in the past, or you haven't done it for a long time, you want to pick the discipline in your project that is going to bring it to the closest level of completion without any help. Like the video game analogy, you would want to be the programmer more than the artist, because you can get something totally functional as a programmer, whereas an artist is just putting the frosting on, which is very important. Sound design, very important, all those kind of things. But you can find those people. In fact, if you had a totally functioning game and you don't have those other 2 components, you just send me a little message through whatever means and we'll connect and I'll get you those people. Or we'll find them. But the other sort of thing you want to keep in mind is the more you bring on dependencies, right? The more you rely on someone else early in the game, it could be disruptive to your process. Now you're worried about something other than this hurdle you're about to cross yourself. We want to keep this very personal between you and yourself until you gain that level of confidence in what you've created to add another person that may or may not satisfy your desires, right? Like, you don't want to be disappointed in artwork when you're halfway through coding something, because it could infect you. It could give you the feeling like, oh man, this isn't working out. Look at the artwork. It's horrible. Well, you know what you do? You fire the artist and you go find another person. You don't like the sounds. You give them a chance to correct. You tell them why you don't like it. Tell them not to get offended. It's all new to you guys. And then you kick them out and they go try again. If they can't get it, a couple iterations, you just find somebody else. Just that simple. This is what the pros do. But this is going to be about you finding your perfection. You blowing your own mind. Man, I tell you what, there's nothing better than that. Where you start something out and you're purposely biting off more than you've ever bit off in your entire life. And every day you just realize, well, I'm going to find a solution to this thing. It just might take me a lot longer for one thing than it did for another. And if your journey is anything like mine, what'll happen is things that you thought were going to just be a day's worth of work turn into like 4 days worth of work. The intro to this show is a screaming example of me assigning myself something I had never done before, and it came out to the point I feel great. But you wouldn't believe where the problems existed that I thought were going to be easy, and they were really difficult, and the things I thought were going to be difficult were really easy. Case in point, one of the things that I thought would be really difficult would be filming myself in my living room with a green screen from all those different angles. I took all kinds of shots. I mean, I threw away 80% of the shots. They're good shots of me walking around the room and stuff, but when I put them in the environment, it just wasn't dramatic enough. It didn't look cinematic. But through using Ian Hubert's tutorials on Blender, I watched one tutorial, found out how to lock my footage to the camera, and I could move the camera wherever I wanted to match the perspective that's in the camera. And by God, those shots came together 2 days. It was so easy. It was just me kind of picking and choosing and trying different things, but I wasn't dealing with the physical difficulty of getting myself in this virtual environment to the point it looked the way I wanted it, where I'm glowing black and white and the rest of the world was blue. Blue and black and white in color, right? In fact, I was going to do the whole intro in black and white. And when I started looking at how beautiful everything was in light, in color, I decided, no. I'm going to add the added extra difficulty of making myself black and white in this thing. And if you want to see the big delta between the first version of the intro and the last version of the intro, just go watch episode, 501? Look at the intro. It's a little bit different. The ship that shows up is really primitive. I'm not glowing in the first shot at walking into the room. There's really scratchy, pixelated frames that I eventually smoothed out. There's little modifications because I kept going, kept polishing. I had to get the show started with what I had. What was difficult that I didn't think was going to be difficult? Something you probably have never really seen with your eyes, but the pods come out of these circular doors that's on the inside of a sphere that is the Odyssey, head of the Odyssey ship. And it's the below the lower hemisphere of the sphere. And I had to put those round, kind of like door jambs on the wall, bound against the sphere. And it's still not perfect. And so figuring out how to put that inside of a lattice and then do a shrink wrap with the lattice against the wall, and then finding out that once you do project it against the wall, it distorts and changes. And so trying to modify it. And once you put a lattice on an object, it slows the whole program down to a crawl. It was tough. So you'll be bit in areas where you don't think you're going to be bit, and you'll just walk right through the eye of the needle in a place that you thought was going to be really difficult. But let's get to you setting the goal of perfection, because that is where it all happens. The game played initially by almost all of us, goes something like this. We sit down and rationally ask ourselves, what are we capable of doing? And then we draw a box around the stuff that we're capable of doing. And then we, as novices to ourselves, will put everything that we ever set as a goal inside that box. So that when you're done, you didn't blow your own mind, really, because you were not outside of your comfort zone. You didn't have to learn anything new. You just lived inside that box. There are times to do those things, especially if you needed money real fast or something. You definitely want to do that. How can I make a product or service that someone can buy where I don't have to do anything new? And then you test it. You put stuff in the box, because there's different boxes, right? It could be you're an artist, could be your programmer, your plumber, whatever it is. You put stuff inside the box, and then you go and investigate. You see what you can do. See if someone will pay for it. Because it's not about blowing yourself away. It's about surviving. Once you gain some footing and survival is taken care of for a while, that's when you can start doing some cool stuff. And when you're a kid at home, you're a college student, however the bills are getting paid, they're getting paid. Maybe you're renting a room and your expenses are taken care of somehow. That's when you want to start reaching out. Maybe you've taken care of your finances. Everything's good. Now it's time to have some fun with who you are as a person. And obviously this is really targeted at people who have a desire to do something special with their skill sets or to learn new skill sets. There's plenty of people who work a good 8 to 10 hour day. They're pooped. They come home. They want to eat some food, sit in front of the TV, whatever it is, go to sleep and repeat. That's just the stage of life they're in. And they're happy. So that's cool. This video is probably not for them. And it could be. It could be that you're sitting around going, well, you know what? I am in this loop. And I'm getting kind of tired of looping all the time. And can't even remember one day after, the other because they're so loopy. My brain's throwing them all away, throwing all those useless memories away. And I'd like to slow down time. And I'd like to create something before I go. Maybe even several things. So the place that, I put it this way. I don't know why I did this as a child, but for whatever reason, almost subconsciously, I would look at a problem that I wanted to solve or something I wanted to do. And I would routinely pick something way outside of the realm that I'd ever done before. And then I just sit down and do it. And yeah, I'd make mistakes. Absolutely. But in the end, I would at least get it done to the point where I had proven to myself that I could do it. And that's what you do. When I got into the video game business, this is where I saw other people doing it in teams of 30, 50, 75 people. Because the way that we made games was that, it was Electronic Arts. And so you were supposed to blow away the whole customer base from anything you had done in the past. And so what we would do is get in a room, which is just hilarious. When I think about this as a guy who's 52 years old, I think about all of us in our 20s. We had no, agile bullshit chasing us around. This is how we do a sprint. Oh, okay, well, that's great, man. That's great. I was in a company where we created, $1 billion worth of video games and there was no agile anywhere. So, if that works for you, then great. But just, you can be very practical with your time, be intelligent with process, and you won't need any other added extra constraints on top of you. You got to stop. Why do I have to stop? Because the sprint's over. Oh, okay. I guess productivity is just going to set aside. It's just almost a way to infect businesses with failure. It's just crazy. But I digress. Going back to all these kids in a room, you got kids between the age of pretty much 20 years old to maybe 30. Maybe the producer was in his 40s, maybe. And we would sit down, design a game. And the way it worked was that everyone knew the competitive game, and we knew the game we made prior if we did. A lot of times, the meetings I were in, we had never done a game before. Of this genre that we're doing, right? Completely new. But we knew the competition. We all played games at home. I played games and I reviewed them online. and a website that's long gone. So we'd sit there and we'd go, you know what was cool about that game? This, and this. But you know what they didn't have that would be really cool? This, and this. And so the whole room would vote on it and say, well, you know, I don't know how you would ever create hand controls for that with the keyboard. And is that, you know, yeah, it would look cool, but is it going to slow down the gameplay to have to click like 4 or 5 buttons at the same time? And then the person pitching would have to come in and go, no, it's really cool, man. We just use these 2 keys and that's all you got to do. Double tap that key or whatever. And everyone going to go, oh yeah, I guess that's pretty cool. But the idea was that we would dream up the most amazing game. Ridiculously amazing game. Now, in the room with us are the engineers. And the engineers are sitting there going, all right, well, I'm listening. And so there's a point when we're done with the game design document, the GDD, and we'd have to hand it off to the people that have to make it come true to write the TDD, the technical design document. And long before they start that process, we have this little come to Jesus moment when our ideas are vetted for possibilities. And so a lot of times, most of the time, everything's possible, for sure. But then someone starts communicating, okay, if you want that option, you're going to have a team of these kind of folks. They're going to have to do this, and these animations. We're going to need all this. So that's going to probably cost us 3 months of time. This feature is like a 1 month thing. That one's probably like a 1 week thing because it's a modification of an existing feature we have. But I'll get vetted down for the time budget, which is obviously the money budget. Money wasn't really an object. Time was mostly what we were up against. How much could we get out of the game engines that already existed? How much would we have to program from scratch? How much artwork was needed for a particular thing? What could the computer actually handle processor-wise? Because a PC could do a lot more than a PS2 or PS1 especially. And so it's all just a game of economics. Sound cards that came into consideration at the time. Well, you want to play too many sounds at once. The computer can't really do that. It's going to start sounding weird. We're going to have to knock really high quality sound files down to half the bit rate, and then it's going to sound crunchy and strange. Are you guys okay with that? No. Okay. Well, you can't have that feature then. Take a pick. So then there was this selection. Everyone's voting on the features of the game. And then we start. We hire the right people. We divide everyone up. The producers tracking all the different tracks of design and what have you. Now that's a group technique. But that is the exact same technique you need to do for yourself to find your perfection. Tell yourself, hey, it doesn't matter what I know now. I want to do this. Something bigger and better than I've ever done in my entire lifetime. Now, there definitely are constraints with things like maybe a financial constraint. But you'd be surprised. Even though, like, the Apollo 13 thing is a complete bunch of crap. It never happened. It was a way to get people interested in the moon missions again. There's still a very valuable lesson in that whole thing, which is you got to solve a problem. And so people sat around. I mean, it didn't really happen, but you've seen the movie. And you know that people do these things all the time. You're on the bottom of the ocean in a submarine that can't go back up, and you got to figure out a way to get back up. Because if you don't, you're going to die, and it ain't going to be fun. What's, I think, important if you've never done it is to have someone reassure you, you definitely can't do it. Being an employer, first a manager, then an employer of a ton of employees, I have seen so many examples, from micro examples to macro examples, of people that were hired for one thing, and then the manager came up and said, okay, dude, you're going to do this. And the employee just turns white and goes, man, what, are you kidding me? I've had it happen to me. I'm going to give you some examples. But it really, the more that you even understand what I'm saying and this sounds interesting to you, you're probably already where you need to be honest. Spiritually, you are where you need to be. Let me give you a stupid, simple example. We had a receptionist at a software company, database company I was working at, great lady. And in Microsoft Office started coming in like 12 3.5-inch hard floppies, right? And CTO of our company, brand new dude, said, okay, we're going to install, Microsoft Office on your computer. And she got up, grabbed her purse and started to walk off. And he's like, what are you doing? She goes, I'm just going to go to lunch. I'll let you do it. She goes, no. He goes, I'm going to make you do it. She goes, I don't know anything about software. He goes, it's easy. Just chill out. Sit down. It's a no-brainer. And she kind of got nervous. She wasn't going to lip off to the guy, of course. She was a very sweet woman. Put the first floppy in. Well, there's a little icon to double click, and it just says install. Boom, double click. Yes, I want to install. He made her do everything. And we sat there for the first floppy. And then all of a sudden it kicks that one out and asks for the next disk. And he says, there's number 2 right there. You see how it says 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Yeah. Well, just put them in once that asks for the next disk. And when it's over, it's going to say it's finished. The cool thing was we walked away. She finished up her install. And then she installed it for everyone on the executive staff. And she was just owning that process. And she felt like $1,000,000. Having learned something new, she definitely looked like an expert. She was useful beyond what she was hired for. Okay, I know it's a little example, but file that one away. So I developed software from a really young age. Professionally from 87 up. But it was 1996. It's January, February, somewhere in there. I've been doing database programming. Never touched web coding, really. I was just about to jump into it. My boss calls me into his office. His name's also Mark, but with a C. And he said, the internet thing's coming. And I want you to go ahead and code all this stuff for us. I said, what is all that stuff? And he says, well, you need to create an FTP app, an email package with enclosures. It's got to be very graphical. I need you to do a web server. I need you to do a web client. I need you to do integration to our database system. And I'm sitting there looking at this guy like, are you kidding me? This is a whole new way of programming, and I know nothing about it. And I've told this story a couple times, but he gets an 8x10 piece of paper, and he goes, it's simple, dude. He goes, first thing you need to understand is everybody invented this stuff. They weren't coders. They had a day job. They were scientists in completely different fields outside of computer science. And so, which may or may not be true, but he starts writing all this out on a piece of paper. And I remember he just used one sheet of paper, and I think it was only one side of the piece of paper. And I took that piece of paper and went back to my desk, and I was like, that's how easy it is? And I got all those products done by May, and I was standing in front of 600 people in June in Dallas, Texas, doing a demonstration, standing room only, man. And I think I got an applause too, right? And so I was like, man, I was selling myself short. How stupid of me. In other areas of my life, I just written my own product that I was selling to corporate, Fortune 1000 companies. And I took that product on. I did something no one else in the whole world had done. And it was a huge product. And I just sat for 6 months at home after my 8-hour day shift at work. And I programmed this thing and got her done. Started selling it. So why did I doubt I could do the other thing? Because no matter who you are, it's a natural thing for you to doubt sometimes that you can do something outside your envelope, right? We had plenty of coders, plenty of artists, sign things. They'd never done it before. Really, really nervous. They feel almost compelled to say yes because they feel like they're going to lose their job. Within about 48 hours to 72 hours, they've asked other people. They got educated. They did go on the internet. They found a friend in town, whatever. And they started seeing that the only anxiety that they had was they'd never seen it done by anyone ever. I mean, what if someone said to you, you're going to actually pound out a sword at a blacksmith? And you're like, what? I've seen some, movies where they do that, maybe a couple YouTube videos, but man, it's got to be a lot harder than it sounds. Well, I'm not saying it's easy to do, especially physically, but you go watch a blacksmith for a day or 2 days or 3 days and you're kind of going, okay, I see it. I kind of get it. I'm going to have to get that hammer in my hand. I'm going to have to hit the metal and realize, to affect the metal that's warm, I'm going to have to figure out, okay, I'm going to give it about a 50% hit. Okay, it didn't really do much. Okay, somebody hit it really hard. Oh, there, I finally got it to move. I could probably even hit it harder than that. And here's the other thing. You're also building up your muscles, your mental muscles, your muscles, with anything that you do. What's also interesting about it is that we don't want to admit it. And this isn't necessarily your goal, but it's a little side thing that's a truth. Let's say that you've seen really incredible people do really incredible things, and you're like, man, I wish I was like that. I wish I could play a guitar solo on stage with a bunch of people watching. Just 'cause. You're not trying to be arrogant with the universe. You're just like, it just looks like fun. Okay. So when you start going into a task that you have never done before, the little kind of Chotsky sitting in the back of your head, or that should be in the back of your head, is, guess what? You're going to be joining a very select group of human beings who've had the guts to do what you're about to do. And it doesn't matter how many times you fail. How many times have you played a video game, or you've driven a nice car, you've interacted with some piece of equipment or something, some solution, or you just see someone craft something right in front of you, whether it be food or something, and it looks so damn easy. Or you play a video game and there's no bugs, but I mean, it's like some massive video game. It's Halo, it's Fallout 4, it's something huge, Skyrim. Or it's even just a video game where it's Pac-Man, and you're thinking, how the hell did they make this game back in the early 80s? How'd they even do it with the processor power that they had? This thing is completely fluid and amazing. The first Asteroids game, stand-up arcade game. I mean, it's just flawless. Well, I think that if you pass your adolescent stage, you will start to recognize, oh my God, whoever made this stuff must have really toiled through a lot of process. They probably failed. And then they kept trying and kept trying and kept trying. And when you screw in a light bulb, doesn't it seem pretty incidental? It's a little filament in there, a little circuit, and it's got to have a vacuum so there's no rust inside there. And then thinking, man, I heard they made 10,000 of these things, Edison, right? Before he came up with the one that really worked. Even if you half that story, 5,000 light bulbs to make the one that you just look at it and you're like, man, it looks so primitive in there. What could have possibly taken even 1,000 iterations? There's not that many parts in there. How could you even have 1,000 differences in this thing, right? Sorry, I had a text there. So part of it is obviously breaking down your mental barrier to begin and to form expectations inside yourself that are realistic. But guess what? Some people equate being a realist with being sort of disappointing, right? Well, you got to be a realist. You got to be practical with what you're capable of doing. And that's not really true. That's not really true. I mean, if you have kids and they're like, Dad, we're going to build a huge space station in the backyard. We just need you to go get like 10,000 tons of wood so we can start cutting it up and making things happen. You're going to say no, but I guarantee you if you said yes and you could somehow figure out, well, you can't have that much, but you can have a lot and just do whatever the hell you want. We need to work on, how you're going to, I'll cut everything for you. You're not going to get access to saws or anything, even though I was hacksawing at 8. They would probably create something pretty cool. And they would learn so much, and so would you, But we don't usually have those sort of extreme experiences. The other benefit of doing something in the 21st century is you have a lot of examples out there. What man is capable of doing used to be a bit of a mystery when I was a kid. You couldn't just go on the internet and see something. I mean, you had to have your parents take you to a museum. You had to watch television maybe, but there's nothing like a museum, man. There's nothing like seeing something real and big. And you're like, wow, that sculpture. Oh my God. You kids are in Europe, man. You get to go see the Statue of David live. You get to go to the British History Museum and go downstairs and see all the Egyptian artifacts in the basement. I hope you understand how absolutely amazing that is. Someone in Egypt looking at the pyramids, just on a daily basis. Well, there they are. It's always been there. I've always seen them every day of my entire life. Imagine that inspiration to say, oh, what can't you do? Those things are so old you don't even know how old they are, probably 35,000 years old. And you're going to tell yourself that you can't fix this little thing right here, your vacuum cleaner? Come on. Now, let's also talk about another foundational thing that's very important. If you surround yourself by folks that aren't creators, then you got to be careful, because you have to sort of evaluate them. There are people who aren't creators who get really, really antsy and I would say almost evil when they get around people that can do things that they can't do. They want to sabotage you at all costs because you're reminding them of what they haven't been able to do in their life. The truth of the matter is they could join you or they could go do their own thing. They could. But for whatever reason, they bought into all the paradigms that they can't do it. They're not special enough. They don't have the proper bloodline, whatever, not the right race or whatever. It's just all hogwash. It's all malarkey. Okay. You can do it as long as you can conceive of it and you have at least some instrumentalities. But I tell you what, with what we have now for communication. So now let's talk about starting your project and sort of some of the things you're going to go through. Because the more that I tell you what's going to happen ahead of time, it's going to take the steam out of any sort of, negative force that might be gnawing at you. When you're designing something and you're dreaming, it's the best part, man. It's the best part. And again, you should probably write down with a pen and paper, screw electronic stuff, man. Get yourself one of those little books that has blank paper in it if you need to. And just a little side note that's really cool. At least 3 listeners have sent me those little books. And it's just fantastic. I use them all the time. But the reason why you want to write down everything you can conceive beyond what you think you can do is that at the inception of your project, if you were to cut things back, like we did in the video game industry, that is, what you're capable of doing, and erase it out of your book or cross it out or something like that. Here's the fun part about that. You will find out as you learn the little things to get the parts done that you know that you can do, or that you have faith that you can learn how to do. You'll learn that those other things that you thought you couldn't do, like were just astronomically out of the park, are fully capable of being done. And so you'll learn how to do those other things. You just get in there and go, well, I don't know how to do that. And so you're like, okay, I'll figure it out. Again, with Season 7 intro, I have got, oh my gosh, I have to say probably at least 2 major areas of the special effects that I have designed that absolutely positively have to be done at a particular degree because I can see it in my head, and I have never ever done those things before. Not to the degree I'm seeing them in my head. I've seen Blizzard do it many times, but I haven't done it. And so I'm going to learn how to do it. If it takes me a year to make that intro, I'll do that. So have faith. Have faith. But now let's say that you're done with the design phase and you're going to start executing. In 100%, I always tell my students that it's the fun 40. The first 40% of the project is everyone chiming in and brainstorming and doing, contributing their DNA. I think that's about right. And it might seem like way more than you might estimate. It's not, though. A lot of geniuses in the world will tell you, and it is accurate, that building anything amazing, you need to do about 95% design, planning, and then it's just 5% to implement. That's if you've done it before. You're sticking within that box that we talked about. That's the box theory. When you're going to make new inroads into your skill set and blow yourself away, I'm going to tell you it's 40% minimum. The next implementation phase, I call it the 50%, right? This is where you find out how difficult various elements of what you're doing are, because it's usually all kinds of different sides of everything. If you're going to paint a car, for instance, it's funny. Certain things, real easy. Take the hood off the car, put it in a nice clean place, spray it down, make sure there's no bubbles or fissures, little fish eyes in it. But it's just one big piece and you can hit the whole thing. But once you have to spray around a window, you have to mask things off. Then you're getting into like, wow, geez, this little pylon between the windshield and the side window and the roof, I got to mask all that off. I have to make sure I sand it all down properly. Don't want to scratch this chrome. Don't want to have to paint on something accidentally because I didn't put my taping down correctly. It got underneath the tape, and now I got red paint on top of my chrome strip, and now I got to get some alcohol and I get that stuff off. You just create more work for yourself. Now, sometimes you'll make those mistakes, and all you got to do is laugh it off. You just go, oh, well, I knew that was a possibility. And, sometimes you'll get into it, and you're, why the hell did that happen? I thought I really sealed that thing off. And you just study it for a little while, put new tape on and spray it again and just do something off on the side of your house. It's like, what the hell? Oh, I get it. This one thing. This tape sucks, whatever it is. I'm spraying from the wrong direction. Whatever it is. But that's where you'll really get to know yourself, is in that 50%. But that leaves 90% at the end, or 10% at the end. You're at 90% completion. So I split the 10% into two pieces, 9% and 1%. Now, this 9% is really, really the telltale moment. You're going to get this feeling if you have any difficulties, because you may not, right? Don't anticipate difficulties as an imperative such that you inject them into your situation, because they don't have to exist. You could just sail past it and go, man, this thing was way easier than I thought. And again, just because you're working by yourself doesn't mean you don't reach out to other people to get advice. There has never been a time in history to get advice from people for free all around the world, because some people are just waiting for that question. They're sitting there going, man, I got information to give people, and no one's asking. Be cognitive of how busy they are, that kind of thing. Be very sort of, hey, I know you might not have any time for me, but I'm trying to figure this one thing out. Go to discussion forums. Oh my God, these guys, you'll have 20 answers. It's crazy. Stack Overflow has helped me with so many algorithms that I needed to have turn into code, and just kind of going, well, I got this, but when this hits 0, it divides by 0. How the hell do I neutralize that? And these geniuses, I've told you the stories in the past, come in and drop the formula in. I had 98% of it figured out, but they put that last 2% in, and all of a sudden it worked. It was like, boom. But here's the thing. If you really bit off a ton, there might be a point where you ramp up in difficulty. And it gets really difficult. And then there's usually a point, in my experience, where it plateaus. It doesn't get any more difficult, but the trick is maximum difficulty. And how do you define that? Well, every day that you wake up, you're running into this, either a problem you haven't solved yet, or as soon as you solve one problem, man, you got another one, and it just seems like, geez, these things are never going to stop. Well, the answer is they will stop. They absolutely will stop. Now, here's the trick, and here's the secret. If you've ever bought into, even from adolescence, this idea that there are special people out there that are better than you, and you're not related to them, and you don't have as much money as them, you don't have parents that help you out. Believe me, I know all about that. Being broke and having parents that are just not even present in my life practically. Not bad, just not present, right? The secret is that when you hit that plateau, when they hit that plateau, they get excited. They get excited because they know the difficulty has reached its maximum, meaning the amount of pain and suffering in so many metaphors that they're going through every single day. It's not getting any worse. Ooh. Well, that means to them that they are right next to this climactic fall of difficulty, where it is going to, one day, there's just going to be this straw that breaks the camel's back of difficulty, and it's going to be just an exponential reduction in pain and suffering. the vision that you put together way back at the very beginning starts to show its face. I can't tell you when I finally got the intro to a point I could do a daily where I could animate something, especially when I did the intro shot where the lights, after the ship arrives, the lights are flickering on and off. Well, it looks like I'm just, manually turning the lights up, turning them down, turning them up, and animating that. I didn't do that. I created what's called an F curve, and it's a sine wave that starts off really intense and then wiggles down. And so I took the amplitude of the lights, a rig up above, and I attached it to the wave. And so the amount of power going to the light bulbs were flickering to the point it averaged out at being fully 100% on. So that was an algorithm and not me having to animate that stuff. It would have taken me all night to do that stuff manually. I mean, it would have taken me probably 2 hours of making a dot and moving it up and down. And why do that, man? I knew there was a way to do it. And my hunch was right, and it worked, and you saw it. Now, let's review. When you start feeling like, because the way I used to describe it was having known several quitters in my lifetime, when I would interview them why they quit, I got very interesting answers. Now, sometimes just life happens and they have to bail out because life happens. I get it. And what you want to do in that situation, in my opinion, is before you put your stuff away because life is knocking at your door. Now, of course, there's emergencies. You're not going to do this. But if it's like you got to move or you're getting a new job, I don't know, whatever, something happens, you want to put everything away in a state where you maybe take that notebook out that you wrote all your ideas in, that you're tracking your progress in. Make as many notes as you possibly can. If you don't feel like you got enough energy to write it down, then get your phone, turn on a recording thing. There's a bunch of like dictaphone type apps. You just push the button and it records, and talk to yourself and say, okay, this is where I am, and explain all of the stuff that you think for sure you're going to remember if you come back, because you won't. You won't remember it all. Now, when you get a chance to come back, you play it all back to yourself. You look at your notes, take photographs of your entire workspace to make sure that you put it back the way it was. And then you'll just smoothly transition back into doing it. You'll be a little rusty at first, but it's going to be like riding a bike, and you get back into it. So use that little trick if you got to pause. At the very end, even though difficulty is probably diminished, there's an interesting thing that happens. You will have seen this project so much before the world ever gets to experience it one day that you may or may not still have a gigantic love affair with what you're doing. The impact of some of the drama that you put together may not feel the way that it felt when you first saw it. Like, for instance, I'm looking at the intro before any of you guys saw it. I'm trying to decide what's the most dramatic way to do things. I had to make some massive changes. When I told you a few episodes back that when the lights come on the pod, I wanted it to kind of spray the room with volumetric light. And I didn't know how to do that. So I had to go learn how to do that. And that slowed render times down by at least 4x. So it took 45 minutes a frame to do on a big computer. Ended up paying about $500 for outside rendering to get that done. So by the time it was 2 weeks before I was about to drop this thing, I have got 3 computers rendering stuff all day long. Sending frames to render farms because I know it's going to take another month if I have to wait for my internal systems to do it. Okay. Now, I'm watching this intro over and over and over again. And I know that in the past, when it matched the music and the lights turn on, the music drops, it was like, man, it has an awesome feeling. But I've seen this thing now 1,000 times, and now I'm not necessarily having that emotion anymore because my body, just like drugs, starts canceling out the experience. Well, this isn't new. We're not going to give you the huge endorphin drop that you used to have a few weeks ago, a few months ago. Even now, if I have to watch it, I don't watch the intro. I'm in here that blam blam, and then I hit the fast forward, when I have to monitor what I've done for you guys. So, Don't be surprised if the impact of what you're doing diminishes for you. Just understand the public's never seen it. And you'll have one of the most magical days of your life where you put this thing out. And here's what's crazy about it. Let's say it is a Sunday night and you're going to drop the new thing that you've made on Monday, some point on Monday. You're just so spent from this project. It took every bit of your soul to do this. You do feel amazing as a person because you've gone outside of your box and done things that you've never done before. Okay. As soon as the crowd sees it, here's this weird miracle that God gives you. It's almost unanimous, okay? All that emotion that you lost from the very first moment you conceived of this amazing thing that you're going to do, it comes back in a nanosecond. It's just boom, and you're experiencing it through them. When they have it's internet, it's comments and things, but if you were to like display it somewhere and they're like, oh my gosh, this is really wild. You're right back where you were, and it all makes sense and it's all worth it. Now, sometimes, like Picasso, who I think debuted his first Cubism painting, which I think is The Party, if I'm right. I saw a big documentary on this painting. He puts himself away for months and months and months creating this new style. Debuts the painting. A bunch of people come in. I'm sure some people had some good comments, but a bunch of people went home and I went to their publisher and wrote scathing reviews of his work. Now, I need you to remember that because imagine that dude. He's got people walking in who immediately get it and he's like feeling great. Then he has people come in, who knows what they said to his face, but they left and just tried to burn him down. And he's got to read these things. He's got to hear about these things. It chases him for a couple of years until his new method of painting becomes one of the most popular ways to paint in the 20th century. He's the inventor of it. Or he takes it to a new level at least, right? So there's that too, where you have exceeded yourself. For instance, 2001: A Space Odyssey, the movie I based the intro on, there were people who got it and said this is the most fantastic scientific creation and film ever. And he had people taking a crap on him, more than 51%. Then later, he's known as the greatest director on planet Earth that America ever created, and he got his rewards, but he had to wait a while for it. The movie Tron comes out. A bunch of us got it, a bunch of people didn't get it and took a crap on it. Blade Runner comes out. Everyone pans this movie or totally worships it. And so, don't worry if what you created is not understood. If it's that kind of project, it could be an internal project for you. It could be I'm building a wing on the side of my house. I never poured a foundation before, never built walls before, a roof that connects to a roof, never made anything waterproof, never did my own electricity, my own plumbing, whatever you're doing. The only people that see it is your family and maybe your neighbors on the outside. Have faith. I used to watch old guys do this all the time in my hometown who'd never done it. But again, ask a million questions to people you have access to. And the internet pretty much removes any excuse that you could possibly have for not finding a mentor online. But the goal I really want you to set for yourself is to get outside of that comfort box. Now, I'll tell you another thing that might not come from other sources, which is, let's say you haven't worked at this level at all for a really long time. You used to, but you haven't done anything for, let's say, 5 or 10 years. And so you're a little rusty on just having any responsibility to yourself. Maybe you made a lot of money and you're retired. Maybe you went through an illness and you got better. Maybe you just got lazy. Doesn't matter. None of those excuses matter as long as you're ready to go. So the only precursor project I might suggest, if you're a little rusty with discipline, is to create a project inside your box. Fill it up pretty good. Fill it up pretty good inside that box. Then execute that one just to get your process up. waking up and figuring out where you're going to find, say you had a job and there's that time you got to figure out when you're going to have time to do things, how you divide up your weekend. If you got a family with kids, you're going to have to allocate time for everybody plus the spouse. So figure it out. And again, as I always say, let your family know what you're doing so that so when they provide time for you, they're proud of you for doing what you're doing. If it's possible to share that space with them, that you could share that space with them. I've known a million cases where dad or mom is out in a garage doing something really cool and the kids can kind of mingle around you. Of course, do your OSHA check to make sure you're not going to poke anyone's eye out. And you could create, honestly, if you want to get really meticulous about it, pick something that is outside your box. Don't worry about being a gigantic project. Just pick something outside your box that you don't think you can do. And try to do that one thing. And I mean as one-dimensional as it could possibly be conceived, but outside your comfort zone. Do it. Figure it out. And then that gives you a little bit of confidence. Then go on to the next thing. Pick one more thing. Then pick two things. You'll find out that the whole thing is just adding a little bit more every single day. I'll tell you one of the weirdest experiences as a coder. I will create projects. I'll create like software applications for companies, for my own stuff, for colleges in the past. And for me, it's usually a two-step process. I will build a machine called a platform that does all the basic stuff that I know I'm going to need every single time I touch a web application. It talks to databases, it controls the interface, communicates back and forth, makes everything secure. So that's a lot of development and a lot of testing. Then you have to create the application on top of your platform. Now you got to interview your client. You got to interview everybody who's involved, the users, the head of state and the customers. You create the interface for it. And you start coding and coding and coding. And then you finally get a product done. Now here's what's wild. Coders back up their files. And so you will take the files from, say, a web server, and you drag them down to your hard drive to make a copy. And depending on your software, at some point, your software will say, I am moving 1.1 million files to the hard drive. And you're like, what? I created every file on that server, and it's 1 million files. They say you can't even count to 1 million, and you're, within 20 years or some shit, right? Okay, well, trust me, you'll be duplicating files and that kind of stuff, which is why it grows a little bit faster. But all that code is executing, and it's executing perfectly. I wrote an app that I deployed in 2015 for the Cal State Long Beach College, which handles all their hiring to make sure it's got a diverse group of people applying for a job. That's what they're legally required to do. It's a pretty significant chunk of code behind that thing. And it is state-of-the-art beyond anything that exists on planet Earth. It's almost like they'll never do it this way ever again sort of thing. But it's beautiful. The screens melt between each other. They don't even transition. It's really cool. I mean, they transition, but it's like this morphing thing that I created. Okay. I contact them and I say, okay, you guys need any updates? I mean, I'm sure something's changed in your department. And they're like, no, this thing's working fantastic. We're still using it. And that was 5 years after I deployed the product. So no bugs, no complaints. I mean, we definitely polished for about probably 3 months after I deployed it. Little printer adjustments and that kind of stuff. But overall, it worked. And you can do the same exact thing. And just understand, all I did was wrote one file at a time, right? Or they say, put one step in front of the other, right? Just take a little step here and there, and man, you'll be in Toledo, Ohio before you know it, And so I hope this, helps you have an extensive process to use to make sure that you can get some of your dreams, find new confidence, and just realize that when you find confidence in A, it can give you confidence in B. Because you rolled up your sleeves once and you were determined to do something outside of your comfort zone, your box. It's very invigorating. It's very empowering. And it starts to open up whole new worlds to your life. I didn't think I could do that. And boom, you did it. So anyway, there are a ton of episodes like this on our website, deepthoughtsradio.com. Just go check out the self-improvement category of videos. Obviously, there's a ton of like psychological videos just to kind of help you get through certain tough times in life, or to sort of you do these kind of things. There's videos on design. I share my whole portfolio of design up to 2015 at the time. I'll have a lot more to share if I ever do a reprise of that. I don't know how interesting that is to you guys, but yeah, I share the process. I share all these different stages in multiple videos in the past. So sometimes just hearing it in a different light, getting an update, you're new to the channel, you haven't gone back and watched 600 episodes. So I just want to repeat these in different tenses for the future here. But all the video, audio, social media, all your remastered season one's up there. There's a store. For those of you who come through Patreon and PayPal, thank you so much. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.